DPS is by far the weakest role in the game, and we're going to explore that and why I'm talking about it and why I do think that the DPS role is currently in a very problematic state, and the balance team seriously needs to reevaluate how we approach the DPS role, because there are certain DPS heroes that can make a difference, and the DPS heroes that are supposed to be making a difference in your games have become somewhat obsolete or extremely clunky to play, to the point where you just feel more frustrated on them than you do feel rewarded on them, where it wasn't like this when Overwatch 2 started. And we need to understand some fundamental aspects about tank and support and certain abilities in the game that need to be dealt with in order for the DPS role to feel better. Now, why am I calling the DPS role weak? Well, it certainly doesn't help the fact that when tank and supports can do just as much, if not more damage numbers than you, then your role begins to feel kind of weird. And if anything, DPS has begun to feel like the role that is supposed to support the tank and the supports in doing their job, then tank and support kind of, well, enabling and allowing for the DPS to do their job. So it feels extremely awkward. The role is back to where it was in Double Shield and GOATs, where it really was either obsolete or it was so clunky, it was so awkward to play in the current game state that you just felt really weird. Now, obviously, I'm not going to talk about the highest levels of play, which is Overwatch League, contenders, etc., etc. I'm going to be mostly referring to ladder, basically anywhere of GM4, GM5, and below, right? Because after this point, things get a little bit more complicated, and I kind of want to keep my videos a little bit more simple and easier to understand for the average player. I play at a GM4, GM3 level. On damage and tank and support, I'm GM5 and GM4 respectively. So at the moment, I kind of don't want to talk about GM or top 500. I kind of want to talk about what I'm seeing on ladder, what I see on quick play, because I have been playing quick play a lot more, and if the problems are there in quick play, I can imagine that in ranked it's much worse, right? So what happened to DPS as a role? Because when Overwatch 2 came out, it was really, really good, right? And then now, a year later, with the official release in Season 6, because we're out of early access, damage as a role feels extremely weird, right? Now, the number one problem that I want to talk about is basically supports were given better abilities from the perspective that their dual ability to fight back against DPS and even tanks had gotten really, really stronger, right? Which started to make the damage roll feel much more risky, in the sense that, oh, okay, this isn't a free kill anymore. I'm not saying the support role should always be a free kill, but as a result of somewhat over kitting the supports, like over buffing some of the supports, we ended up in a situation where flankers like Genji and Tracer started to feel really weird, right? Even Reaper just kind of disappeared from the game, despite being very fun to play and very viable in seasons 1 and 2, and now he's just kind of bad. He's not even picked for bursting down supports because of how high healing has become, right? Now, playing a damage hero nowadays feels extremely awkward, because when you do damage, when you do high burst damage even, right? First of all, you're forced to play high burst damage heroes or Bastion simply because the healing in this game is out of control, right? And if you're playing something that does lower damage comparatively, like Reaper or Genji, or a little bit of an average Sojourn player or something like that, and even just the hit scan heroes, like if you're just not good at them, if you're not consistent with your shots and things like that, the value for a support player to so quickly out heal that one damage that you shot, and you failed the follow-up, but the support didn't fail in healing that person, because healing is so easy to do in this game, you lose so much value. Like the window for you to get value, or the window for you to apply pressure as a DPS player, is so hard, because they are these tiny opportunities that barely exist for like 1 second or 1.5 seconds, where if you don't kill this person, sorry, eliminate this person, YouTube algorithm and everything, eliminate this person, you are going to lose that team fight, and it's going to be your fault. It's going to be your fault on the damage roll for not playing picture perfect. And that's kind of the route that they took with a lot of the DPS characters, right? They nerfed a majority of like the hit scans and some projectile based heroes into a point where, okay, play this character picture perfectly, otherwise you will lose. Now, those were the high skill heroes like Genji, Widowmaker, Tracer, Hanzo, Sojourn. They've all kind of been like, made in their own, each in their own individual way, clunky. Like how Hanzo, he cannot do his jump shots anymore. Like if he climbs up a wall and then tries to shoot again while having a charged arrow, the charged arrow now resets and he must charge it again. And that was one of the like most important ways for Hanzo to look for a pick on the backline or somebody that's off angling. And now he can't do that, right? Genji's ability to be a very aggressive flanker just isn't there anymore, and he's more like a character that tries to follow up on something his team is doing, and honestly, it's really unfun to play him like that. Then you have another flanker in the sense of Tracer. Like Tracer's kind of come down to like that too, especially with the addition of 𝐒𝐿iari and how good her healing pylon is and just how healing is in general right now. Even Tracer from an individualistic perspective and the average levels of play feels extremely awkward because again that window of opportunity for you is like you must play extremely perfect, right? Like you can make mistakes in tank sometimes and you can get away with it, right? You can make a lot of mistakes on support and you will 100% get away with it because support is extremely powerful right now. And I say this as somebody who's been exclusively playing support and ranked, right? Support is really strong and they have it really good, and we're going to get to them in a little bit, right? My point is that the damage roll, with the exception of certain characters that I'm going to talk about next, most of the damage characters from the hit scans and to like your Genjis and your Reaper and Tracer, the flex DPS role, and Echo as well, I guess you could add her, and even Pharah. These characters have to put in so much effort to get any value to change the course of the team fight by having an impact in the game, right? Like if your Echo, Genji, Reaper, Tracer, or hitscan player really wants to have an impact in the game, they have to do 3 times of what they're supposed to do on that character to be able to do anything, right? But then you have, on the other hand, have supports who can press one button and change the course of a fight. Even tanks sometimes can press a button or two that can change the course of a fight if they know what they're doing, right? Or they just exist on Orisa and they turn your whole life around as your Reinhardt struggles to duel her, right? Anyways, now that is one thing, right? Like in order to get value on DPS, it's hard because you have to do so much, right? And if you don't have resource investment from your tank and supports, you're kind of screwed, especially if you play against a team who at least semi-invests their resources into their DPS players. You as a DPS player, either trying to outduel another DPS or trying to pressure a backline, are not going to succeed in your job because like there's too many things working against you, right? There's too much pressure on you, there's too much healing on their team. Like it just feels like, well, what am I supposed to do? I don't know what I'm supposed to do. My Mercy, my Ana doesn't want to nano me. I can't go in with Blade, right? Like what am I supposed to do? If you might be playing something like like Ashe, right? Like Ashe gets a lot of benefit from having Mercy or even a Zen with her. Like if you don't really have those things to help enable these hero picks on the damage side of things, the damage roll really begins to struggle. It feels very clunky and very awkward, and it's like, sure, you can make it work. I'm not saying you can, right? Like there's always like 2 or 3 players in the enemy team that are a little bit silly, and you can punish that silliness and win your games, right? But like again, when the matchmaking actually works out and we end up in like a fairly balanced games, from an overall perspective, the damage rule begins to feel obsolete, and it's like, wait until our support presses their button and we can win the fight. Wait until our tank goes in and presses his button and we can win the fight, right? But for damage, it's like, okay, land 3 headshots, do a melee, and then you'll get the kill. Oh, and make sure you bait out the cooldowns, otherwise they will erase your kill. And of course, this applies to tank and support, right? But the way tank is designed, because they have higher HP pools, there's more time for them to commit to like a duel or getting an elimination, that it doesn't really phase them that much when it's working out in their favor, right? And support, right, like for support, it feels like you have to kill them 2 to 3 times because of the amount of abilities in the game in the support role that either gives them invulnerability or immediately brings their HP bar back. And if they're playing around a mini or mega health pack, it's even worse, right? So it begins to feel frustrating in the damage roll that, okay, well, how do I do this? Now, again, before I go on, and since, a lot of people are new to the channel and everything, I play all 3 roles. I'm mostly a DPS/Genji main, but this season I've been exclusively playing support, and almost all my videos I've done my level best to be unbiased, but from the damage roll perspective, at the moment I do have to speak about its problems, and I might show a little bit of bias here and there, simply because I do think the role has become incredibly boring and frustrating to play, and an even better role to play quote-unquote damage on is the support role, because they do high damage, they do high healing, they have amazing abilities that can change the course of the game. It's like, why are you playing the damage role at this point? You can just play the support role and actually have an impact on your games, right? And you have so many things working out in your favor. Everybody's in front of you. People will peel for you. People will like realize how important you are, because without you, that team can't function, right? So you don't get this benefit on the damage roll. In fact, there's this huge misconception about the damage roll that, well, we or not misconception, but this like philosophy within, especially the casual player base, where they just don't appreciate damage players, like good damage players or whatever the case might be. It's always just kind of like, yeah, well, I hate this guy. Like he's the DPS player. I'm going to report him. Like I see this a lot. Like if in fact, if you play DPS and you play support and you play tank, right? Play each role today, legit, right now after this video. Play each role, or if you're playing right now and you're listening to this in the background, pick tank and ask for somebody on your team to swap. See the response that you get. pick support, and then ask somebody to swap in your team and see the response you get. I promise you, 9 times out of 10, those responses are rather sweet, or they ask you, okay, what can I go to help you, right? But if you're a damage dealing player and you ask for some help because you realize that I need more resources to play against the enemy comp, because they are investing resources to deal with me, so therefore I should ask my team for resources to help me, right? And what happens as a result? Your team is like, no, go F yourself. No, you don't deserve resources, blah, blah, and things like that. People start reporting you. You get falsely banned and things like that. It's incredibly frustrating, right? Then the damage roll from every perspective feels bad, because it's like, okay, I can't do my job that effectively because the other roles do my job better than I do. So I'm just there trying to help those roles do my job better than me, right? Then the other perspective is, well, I can't play this hero. I can make it work if I had like a support or somebody kind of enabling me and helping me out. So, and then when you finally ask for that help, well, you get a response like you're being toxic because you're asking somebody to swap, and that person just doesn't understand that, well, maybe playing somebody like, I don't know who to like use an example, but maybe playing like Baptiste in a full dive comp isn't the best idea, given the fact that he kind of gets left behind and all of us are diving in. It's better he goes 𝐒𝐿𝐄 and follows us, or goes Ana and snipes us, goes Mercy or Moira and follows us in. Like, but no, like, there's this like philosophy which is really, really like all over the place, right? Let me drink my coffee 1 second. And that it just makes the DPS role like much more frustrating to play, and the expectations on DPS are really high, right? It's like, well, like, you better get a 3k every fight or you're going to get flamed and blamed, right? That then brings us to the third point. Sorry, I kind of had to rant about that in the middle, right? That brings us into the third point of the damage roll, right? We talked about first point, the second point. Now the third point that I want to talk about, this is where things get juicier, right? The inherent problem with the damage roll right now, and this is something that the balance team really has to understand, we cannot allow low skill heroes to take over the game. We cannot allow these cheesy heroes to take over the game. Now, which heroes am I referring to? These characters are only in the damage slot, right? Funnily enough, while I might argue some things that are frustrating about tank and support, they can always be dealt with rather easily, right? But the problem with the damage roll is there are certain characters like Bastion, Junkrat, Mei, Symmetra, Sombra, and Torbjorn, right? These characters should never ever be allowed to be viable, simply because like the way that they function, the gimmicks that they're bringing to the game are extremely fun to play, right? Now imagine you're playing tank, you're playing Reinhardt, you want to play some Reinhardt, right? You have a perma-invis Sombra behind you, like hacking you the entire game. How is that fun gameplay, right? And then the enemy team just walks into you, deletes you, and moves on, right? Now, the Sombra player, she's not even interacting with you directly. She's not shooting you in a first-person shooting game. She just presses a button, and now you can't do anything, right? And she's invisible, so unless you really pay attention to the little lines that happen in the animation, you're never going to find her, right? Then we have the problem with Mei, right? While Mei is nice to play every now and then in brawl comps when she's viable, starting to just buffer and buffer and buffer every patch, we're eventually going to end up in a Mei meta, and I hate Mei metas. I think Mei should never ever be viable. I think the fact like how she can just wall off a tank and that tank just can't do anything about it, and we keep promoting these characters that just say, well, you can't play the game. This is not fun gameplay design. This is extremely counterintuitive. It goes against the philosophy of what makes shooters good, or what makes a shooter good, sorry. And then you look at another character, again, in Bastion, right? And these things are really not that hard to do. You get your muscle memory down, you have the basic common sense, which I don't know if it's common anymore in Overwatch with what I've been seeing in the ranked games lately at high and lower levels of play, especially when I'm coaching. I'm like, what the hell is going on? But anyways, like, think about Bastion for a second, right? Like, what happens when there's a Bastion in a game, right? A Bastion comes out, like, like, think about the skill investment to ruining the life of the tank player on the other team, or even the support players or the other damagers, right? Bastion comes in, your team just kind of plays around you, okay? You enter the choke, you enter turret form, and if that tank does not line of sight immediately, if that tank does not walk away from your line of sight immediately, he is gone. And your tank is now the final raid boss with you behind him, and you can walk in and you can delete everything. Is that good gameplay design? Hell no. And if anybody thinks that's good gameplay design, you are insecure that you couldn't get good at characters that need skill, that should reward you for it. And you just want to lock this character and go from gold 3 to gold 2 and feel good about yourself. And you know what? That's fine. That's fine. If it's working in gold, it's fine, right? Why is it working in Masters in GM now? That's horrible gameplay design. It should never be viable enough to where it comes to Masters in GM, or even Diamond for that matter, where Bastion generally becomes a problem, and it can overwhelm people to the point where they just don't know how to deal with it, because the coordination needed is just not possible in ranked, right? It's just not possible. It's another thing. It's like even the Orisa problem, like in theory you could play around Orisa, but the problem is that because that level of coordination just isn't possible in a setting where there's like 6 or 5 or 4 people playing that are randoms, excluding your duos or trios, like the amount of resources you need to shut that down is too tough, right? And it's very easy to enable for the team that's doing it, right? Like, okay, they got Bastion, they got a Mercy with him, they got a Baptiste with him. What are you gonna do about it? Okay, Mercy's pocketing him, healing him, damage boosting him. Baptiste got that immortality field and high burst healing ready. There's an Orisa with that Bastion. It's extremely difficult to play against, right? It's extremely like annoying to play against. And the same thing also applies to Torbjorn. Torbjorn, while he doesn't have like that high burst damage over time, he does have high damage over time, he does have high burst damage, and they gave him a fire rate increase. Dude, whenever I play tank or support, right, I slightly peek through a corner, and if I didn't hear the overload from Torbjorn, then I just get like dinked, I get quadruple dinked out of nowhere, and I can barely react to it. I'm like, what was that? This guy is sniping faster than Ashe across the map, right? And that's not even acknowledging the fact that there's a sixth body that he brings with the turn, right? And when these characters start to become more popular, even Symmetra is like less of a problem. I do bring her up because sometimes she can be like too much, but she's easier to deal with. Like she insta loses against like good dive comps or decent farm mercy comp. Like she can insta lose against all of that. 1 second, coffee break again. I still think like the quality of life buff that they gave her, where if she's charging up her beam against a shield, it gives her lifesteal. That little sustainability, you can feel it, especially as like a tank player or another DPS player. When you're trying to like contest her, you can see her HP bar going back up. And trust me, like you feel kind of helpless on the other end of it. Like, what am I supposed to do? Like, she's slowly turning into a 120 damaging beam raid boss, right? And again, the investment required is, it's not like, yeah, her beam is quote unquote hit scan, or it's a laser beam, so you have to like trace with it and everything. But the problem with that, at the end of the day, it's like it's extremely forgiving the second it gets charged up, right? And that's where the value comes from. Is when the beam gets charged up and she just gets in your face, you are getting melted by the microwave that she brings with her, right? And inherently, like, I'm fine with Sim, like, because it's easier to deal with Symmetra with the rest of the hero roster than at the moment, by the way, at the moment, specifically at the moment, season 6, right? Than comparatively to a Bastion or Torbjorn, right? Now, funnily enough, a character that was good at dealing with Bastion and Torb was Hanzo, right? Hanzo could like Storm Arrow the turret, Hanzo could Storm Arrow Bastion in turn form. And he just can't do that because they like gave him extra armor or something like that. And overall, just Hanzo feels bad because like Bastion and Torb can actually completely outpace Hanzo in the time it takes for him to shoot them. They can just melt him, right? Again, assuming that both sides are landing shots and everything. Hanzo has a downtime of charging up the arrow, letting the arrow travel and things like that, while Torbjorn got this Giga buff where it's just like he turns into a machine gun that just shoots like lava rocks at you now, right? And Bastion just like bursts him down. I would know because I'm kind of abusing Bastion these days, right? And the point that I'm trying to come down to with Sombra, Mei, Sim, Torb, and Bastion, and okay, I guess we could slightly excuse Sim because she's only really viable on certain maps. 1 more second, coffee break again. But what I'm trying to say is like these low skill heroes that are really easy to pick up and really easy to understand, they shouldn't be allowed to be abused this much, right? And it's not just that, like you have to think about it from the tank and support perspective too. It's hard for tank because I'm trying to be as unbiased as possible, right? And I play all 3 roles, so I know how I feel when I run into Bastion and Torb, right? As a tank and support player myself at high levels of play, I would rather deal with Ashe, Cassidy, Echo, Genji, Hanzo, Pharah, slightly somewhat, Reaper, Sojourn, Soldier 76, and Tracer. Widowmaker is like we shouldn't talk about Widow right now. This is not the video for Widowmaker, right? I would rather deal with those heroes that I listed than ever come down to a point where I'm like, okay, I have to like play against Torb, I have to play against Sombra, Sim, Mei, Bastion, and they're incredibly frustrating to play against, right? And it's not just like those heroes as individuals. What those heroes kind of demand, like especially if we just isolate, like at the moment, I'm gonna isolate Bastion and Torb because they really like they are the ones that I'm seeing a lot more than the other heroes that I mentioned, right? But I promise you, when Bastion and Torb fade away, we're going into Mei meta. I'm telling you from now, okay? Anyways, besides that, Bastion and Torb kind of force like this like Orisa comp or even like this like variation that I'm seeing here and there of Zarya, Junker Queen, or Ramatra that kind of come with them, and it makes it so much harder to deal with those DPS characters, right? And we come down to a situation where it's like, well, we have to pick our poison, right? Do we want the hit scans to be in a good spot, as well as some high skill projectile TPS heroes like Echo, Pharah, and Genji to be to be the representatives of that role, or do we want to make sure that the representatives of the quote unquote flex DPS role should be Sombra, Sim, Torb, Mei, Junkrat, and Bastion, right? And in my personal opinion, if I had to pick, I would rather Echo, Pharah, Genji be the viable ones, and Bastion, Junkrat, Mei, Sombra, Sim, and Torb be the ones that are like the every now and then pick that you can like surprise somebody with, or somebody that's a specialist on those characters. Only they know how to make them work, right? Like I personally think it's not good when, like for example, let's take Genji right now, right? He's decent, he's not bad, he's not good, he's decent. Like especially like if he has good team resource investment, like if you're getting the bubbles from your Zarya, if you're getting nanoed, if you're getting damage boosted, and you have another person that's like damaging the person that you're jumping on, you can make Genji work, right? But it shouldn't take that much resource investment for the Genji to work, right? The same thing kind of applies to Echo. Okay, well, not necessarily. Echo has really high burst damage, so you can kind of play her without like much resources and things like that. But none of these heroes should need this much help to kind of stand on their own 2 feet. If you guys understand what I'm saying, right? Like support has become so strong because they don't need anybody else to kind of help them out because they can do everything now, right? So they become like these individualistic characters that can kind of do everything, right? Like they can do high damage, they can do high healing, they have high mobility, they can do everything, right? And then you come down to the DPS role and you look at Cassidy, right? And the saddest thing I thought about Cass, right? Like I'm sure all of us hate like 225 Cass, but he's still an honest hero, right? And how you play him, because you need aim, you need good positioning, right? And they actually said in the patch notes that he was underperforming, and then they actually nerfed his range even further. They gave him the worst drop off that I think he's ever had, and he's so bad right now that I genuinely think he's a throw pick in the current state of the game, season 6, right? Because I know if this video gets watched after a patch or something, they'll be like, oh well, Cass is really good now. But I actually think that Cass is really, really weird, right? Like he's in a really weird spot. He's a little bit all over the place, right? Ash is still really good, right? But again, like even sometimes a good coordinated team of Orisa, Bastion, Torb just overruns Ash, and she just doesn't have the speed to deal with these things, right? Especially like Ash against Orisa, like what are you supposed to do, right? Like sure, Ash can have high ground, burst down the Orisa, but Orisa just stays alive long enough to the point that the Ash can't do anything about it, right? So we really are in this weird problem right now where the DPS role is beginning to feel more and more cosmetic, and tanks and supports are the ones that are like, well, we can do everything, the game relies on us, right? I was ranting about this to like my friends as well, like throughout the past few weeks and everything. I was like playing ranked and I was like, you know what's so frustrating about playing ranked right now? It's like if my tank and supports don't know what's strong in their role and refuse to play that, I can't do anything about it. I lost so many games the last week. I made up for it now. I'm back where I belong. But I lost so many games last week because we had like so many people that were just like, okay, we're going to force Reinhardt into Orisa because we watched like, some streamer or whoever do it. And it's like, bro, you are not 𝐿𝐻𝐶𝐈𝐀𝐋. You are Tom69 in my lobby and you're running it down mid and the Bastion is tearing you apart. Okay? Like, and we're running Mercy Lucio as the healing comp, right? The support comp, right? And Mercy Lucio plus Ryan. Come on now. Like, if anybody understands basic Overwatch composition, you know that that's not good, right? My arguments and everything are a little bit all over the place because I'm doing this unscripted and everybody loves it when I do unscripted stuff. And I just kind of ramble about the state of the game or the rules, right? I do want to talk about the balance problems, right? But the final thing that I want to discuss is it is extremely easy to render the value of DPS useless. I know this is going to talk about point 2 again, but the power in a mortality field, the power in even like the pull ability from Life Weaver, the power in Kiriko Suzu, Res, Ana's anti-nade, Moira being really good against like half the DPS roster if she knows what she's doing. Most of the supports are 𝐒𝐿𝐼 being an amazing duelist. 𝐒𝐿𝐼 is basically what Moira should have been, in my opinion, right? Like she's an amazing duelist, she does high heals, and she brings a game-changing ultimate. That's basically like Moira is like the easier version of 𝐒𝐿𝐼, right? And 𝐒𝐿iari actually has a better DPS ultimate than I would say 90% of the DPS roster. Like, and that's so sad to think about, right? Like the support hero brings in a high damaging, not only explosive damage ult, like it's a high burst damage ult, it also slows you, it also adds a negative status effect on you, okay? It lingers on you for 4 to 5 seconds. Like, why does a support have something like that, right? And yeah, the argument can be made, well, supports are all about enabling people, and technically that's her allowing her team to go in and follow up and allow for the Sunstruck ability to explode and kill those people with her, right? And the point is, yeah, sure, you can make that argument. I'm not saying that's not the argument, right? It's like, what I'm basically saying is, why does the DPS role, why do they suck at that part of making gameplay changing moments, right? Like even normal Dragon Blade, not Nano Blade, normal Dragon Blade, sorry, Dragon Blade, not normal Dragon Blade, Dragon Blade without a Nano or a Mercy Pocket behind them is so easy to counter these days. Even when I play quick play and I'm playing as like these like plats and golds, like they just like look at me and they're like, what are you doing? I Suzu, I dropped Immortality Field and we bursted you down in the time it took for the next slash to connect. And I'm just like, damn, what's going on, you know? And it really feels like for DPS to have an impact in the current state of the game, you have to do so much more. You have to do so much. Like for example, let's say you're playing a flanker. Let's say I'm playing Genji. I'm like, okay, I got Blade, we got Nano, but I know if I Blade right now, the Zen's gonna trans, right? I gotta go and try to force out trans because it's not like anybody else on my team's gonna do it, right? So you go on a flank, you're like, okay, let me just kind of like tickle the Zen a little bit and let me try to do a combo on it and see if it works, right? Now you try to do something with that, and Kiriko Suzu's it. So like, okay, they have no Suzu, right? But they still have Transcendence, so I still can Blade, right? Now what I could do is I could dash up, use Nano to force out the trans, because the Zen will think, oh, he's blading, and then after the Transcendence ends, I could Blade, right? Great, sure, let's do that. Now I do all of that, and I pull out Blade, and what do you know? Suzu's back, and I get on this Kiriko and Zen to try and eliminate them, and it doesn't matter because Zen will kick me away. I will go flying into the wall of Colosseum. I will become a part of the statues of the warriors that once lived, and Kiriko will make sure that her knife deletes me across from across the map after the Zen has thrown me across the map with his like rider kick that he has, right? And that is like, when you think about how easy it is, right, for support to do that and cycle through that process, is very strong, right? Even tanks, from how they can like what it takes for them to change the course of a fight, it's not that difficult, right? It like they're like the way that they're supposed to do these things. Tanks' problem is inherently like how they interact with supports, right? Like, and I've been saying this a lot, like it's not a coincidence that the game felt good to play in season 1 and 2 because support wasn't overly kitted. They weren't over buffed, right? I do agree that support needed some help, but the direction that the balance team is taking them is not the right way forward. And I don't want to go into damage creep. I've been saying this for so many videos now, that damage creep is not the way, right? And that's what we're seeing. Like, why do you think the Junker Queen got a Dragon Blade increase? Why do you think Bastion got that soft rework and a lot of damage increase? Why do you think Torbjorn got the fire rate increase? Why do you think like Mei got the damage increase technically, right? Like, and all this type of stuff. And we're gonna see this continue. Sojourn is basically back into somewhat of her season 1, season 2 form where she was strong, but she's kind of weird right now, right? And my argument basically is that they're slowly putting these DPS characters back into a more unhealthier state, one by one. Like right now we're in that phase where the easy heroes got that treatment, right? Now they're going to notice that, well, now the hit scans and characters like Genji, Fire, Echo are beginning to phase out, and they're going to give them really big buffs. And is that the solution? No, it's not. As much as I'd love for Genji to be broken, I don't want him to get over buffed, because then they'll gut him again, right? In like less than a week or something, because the support players will cry about it. But what I want to see is that instead of us like relying on damage creep to balance out the game, I would love to see a healing nerf, an overall healing nerf, and rather emphasize the power in supports that, hey, okay, like you can heal, but your abilities are all about supporting somebody, not healing somebody, if you understand what I mean, right? Like, try to enable your teammates and try to also help with the dueling part. That's what I want support to become. Because if you think about it, support players always complain that, well, we can't duel DPS and tanks as well as they can duel us, right? And sure, Blizzard tried to help with that, right? But what the problem inherently became is that it left no weak spots in the support role, especially if you played those supports together. Back in Overwatch 1, it actually mattered a lot how you paired your supports together. Nowadays, you just tap, you just pick Ana, you pick Baptiste, you have high healing, you have all these abilities that cover all your weaknesses. There is no point if you don't have any synergy from the support role, right? Like, it doesn't matter, like, oh, you're playing Ana Bap, why? And it's like, yeah, but boy, it doesn't matter because we do high healing. Like, what's the point of having synergy or trying to complement each other's picks if we could just remove all those problems by picking two characters that do everything, right? Then at that point we have no weaknesses, and that's the problem, like with the support role. And then we come down to the tank role that then suffers from this because they can't make plays, so they're just kind of like, okay, it's either I blow up or I do the blowing up, right? There's no in between, right? And then it comes down to the damage roll where they know that healing is out of control. So they're like, okay, guys, if you don't like the high healing in the game, you must play Bastion and you must play Torbjorn and some of these other characters here and there. Otherwise, like, I don't know, good luck. Like, good luck with your games. Try to do 5 times as more on characters like Cassidy, Ashe, Hanzo, Sojourn, Genji, and good luck, right? And even then, it feels unfair to play because it's like when you start playing these characters into the easier to play characters, you feel how easy it is for like Torbjorn and Bastion to get value compared to, let's say, somebody like Hanzo, Sojourn, Genji, and Ashe right now, right? Like the value that Torb and Bastion can bring right now just by existing is higher because you're a tank, you turn the corner, they have a Bastion, you're like, oh shit, here we go, right? He's gonna enter turn form at some point, he's gonna start melting me, right? I gotta play that smart, I gotta play that safe. I really hope that my DPS and supports can push with me really quick so we can either turn this corner, get to a good spot and push point, or like my DPS can insta burst the Bastion. So now the problem goes to the DPS role. It's like, okay, can you insta burst the Bastion? And then the problem happens where there's too much healing in the game. You cannot kill the Bastion kills you. And now you're back at step one of, okay, let's repeat this process, but now your tank is tilting. And now your supports are tilting because they're like, well, bro, you got to do something. And it's like, well, why don't you pick Zenyatta or Baptiste or Ana and sleep him, anti-nade him, you know, throw in a Metallic Field for us, you know, like pick 𝐒𝐿iari and snipe him. Like, you can do the job better than we can. I even saw this comment a while ago that was basically like, do you know what the funny thing is? Like Kiriko, Zenyatta, and 𝐒𝐿iari are better at dealing with a Widowmaker than any of the other damage heroes, right? That is the saddest part about, like, think about it, right? Think about it for just 2 seconds, right? Kiriko, Zen, and 𝐒𝐿iari are better at dealing with Widowmaker than her counterparts within the DPS role, right? Because they're more consistent and they have more abilities to bail themselves out or to keep them immortal, to keep themselves alive, etc., right? The list goes on. So now the question is, what can be done for the damage roll? How do we help the damage roll, right? I want the damage roll to be healthy. It's always going to be a little bit one-dimensional, that each damage roll character is just another way of doing damage and getting kills, right? And some of them can bring some unique utility. I want the game to be centered somewhat around hit scans and from the projectile DPS role, Echo, Pharah, and Genji, right? With a bit of Reaper here and there as the middle ground of, okay, we can play Reaper in case the tank is having a bit too much fun, right? Because Reaper is much easier to deal with than a Bastion, right? Characters like Bastion, Junkrat, Mei, Sombra Sim, and Torb, because of the gimmicks that these characters promote, because of like the style of gameplay that these characters promote, the problem with them is that it's too frustrating to deal with them. It makes the game feel awkward. They should be good on the maps that they can be good on, in the compositions that they can be good on, but they shouldn't be allowed into a point where you can play them anywhere, right? If you want to disagree with that, that's completely fine. I understand. I come from a thought process of a little bit of higher levels of play, but I do play with my friends and they play lower levels of play, and I've been seeing this like problem that, you know, like I was talking with my friend, you know, my buddy, he came back, he's playing Overwatch after like a few years and things like that, and he's like, bro, I'm just locking Orisa, and he has like a 70% win rate going from silver all the way up to plat, right? But now the question becomes, like, when you play this easy to play character and then he like climbs this much, right? What happens when Orisa gets nerfed and the guy can't play any other tank? Imagine how many games he's going to throw, well, not like intentionally throw, but soft throw, trying to learn how to play the tank role in platinum, right? Because the difference in silver and all the way up to plat is night and day, and it's not like Orisa is a character that challenges the concept of a shooter from the perspective that, like, she tries to like outduel somebody, she tries to pressure somebody and things like that. She just says, I exist, and if you don't play Zarya into me, you're going to have a hard time, right? And sometimes in Overwatch, slowing the game down and staying alive more is basically how you win a team fight, and Orisa promotes that level of gameplay. And with her, a character that works really well with her, or two characters that work well with her, are Torb and Bastion, right? Torb, you literally just lock it down, like if you're defending, you lock it down with the turn, you look down the choke, you hold E, you hold left click, you press E, and you win the game. You just burst, you do so much burst damage, your turret is helping you do the damage, you're building your ult quickly, your lava, you're blowing your load all over the place. You are winning that easily, right? Bastion is the same thing too. Oh, they turn the corner, they're pushing, I enter turret form, I start melting your tank. What are you going to do about it? Now my tank walks in for free and deletes all of you. Oh, you're turning the corner again? Okay, the next team fight? Well, my ult builds very quickly, and here comes 3 missiles that are going to catch one of your supports and one of your DPS, and now if the tank survives, he's going to have to forcefully go back, and the cycle repeats, and that's just not fun gameplay design, right? Like, I would rather Overwatch be a game of us trying to outplay each other from a mechanical perspective, and not just I turn this corner, I press this button, therefore I win, right? And if you don't turn the corner in time, I win against you. And that's just not good gameplay design. And at the moment, while the game is slowly like adjusting, because we did get some Zarya buffs and Orisa's a little bit here and there, they're still viable. Like Bastion, Torb, and Orisa are still viable enough to where they can still work, especially at lower levels of play. So what I want to see is like why do people commit to games like Overwatch? Sorry, games like Apex, Fortnite, and Valorant. But Overwatch is the game where they struggle to commit to, right? And what I kind of take away the problem with the game is, in order for people to commit to your game, you need to make them excited about the idea that you're going to learn. It's going to, like, this character that you're playing is quote unquote hard to play. You're going to have to learn this character, but once you learn this character, you're going to get a lot of value, right? And then there should be the other side of that hero approach, where this character is easier to play. It can only go up to a certain point, but if you become a really good specialist on this character, you can make it work. But you should definitely know when to swap to a much more viable character than that character, right? If I think about the support role, I think about Moira, right? Like, Moira shouldn't ever get as much free value as she does all the way up to mid masters, right? And even then, even in GM these days, there's Moira players running around, right? It's very easy to play that character, right? But it shouldn't, that player playing that character shouldn't be rewarded for doing basically just the bare minimum of interactive based gameplay, right? And that's just the way I see it. Like, everybody has their own opinion. This is going to probably be my most controversial video, but let's try to keep the discussion healthy and as open-minded as possible. In conclusion, again, for the damage role, the way to make it much more healthier is we got to look at some of the stuff in the support role. We got to look at some of the stuff in the tank role. I don't think the tank role is the problem. I think supports need to, like, get some of these, like, really game-changing abilities slightly toned down, so that there are more windows of opportunity for tank and DPS to kind of make a difference. And then for the damage role, we really need to just make sure that these cheesy, easy-to-play characters are not the viable ones that you can just pick whenever and just, change the tide of the game whenever you want. Like, oh, we start the team fight, we're playing dive, oh, things didn't work out and they're playing this. Okay, I just picked Bastion, my tank goes Orisa. We win the game because they refuse to counterpick us. And this has been the state of rank for a while now. And maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm finally going insane because, maybe I just am, right? And that's sometimes what too much Overwatch does to you. But I would love to hear you guys and your thoughts down below. Do you think easy to play cheesy characters are the way to go? And should we keep them viable at all times, even though I might disagree with it? Or do you think that, yes, we should let these characters be somewhat of a niche pick, and instead we should try to emphasize on people actually learning how to play the shooting characters, the ones that actually require aim and skill and positioning, instead of these characters that just, well, I pick this character, I hold this button and I win, right? Because in my opinion, we should try to share that love and respect for putting in time and effort to getting value than just, well, I play Overwatch once a week and I'm gonna just lock Bastion and Orisa and win all my games, right? So that is it for this video. It was unscripted. It was a little bit all over the place, but I would love to hear your guys' thoughts down below. And let me know how you would approach the damage roll. I think that'd be a great discussion point.